Hey everyone!
Hey guys!
Welcome to another episode. We are Kelly and Ned Vandiver, founders of the Relationship Loft, where we help individuals and couples heal their relationships with themselves and their partners from the inside out so they can create the great love that they desire and deserve in their lives. And we are talking about today the fourth losing strategy in communication. And we're talking about it as part of a series that we've been taking you through for the last few weeks called the 5 Losing Strategies in Communication series. And we're talking about the 5 losing strategies that Terry Real talks about in his book called The New Rules of Marriage. And so today we're talking about retaliation, which is the 4th losing strategy.
Which is pretty meaty.
Which is really meaty.
Yeah.
And we're going to get into what it means and what it looks like so that you can become self-aware around this pattern and this losing strategy if it's something that yourself or your partner are struggling with, okay? And I've said it before, I'll say it again, that the reason why people have problems in their marriages is because they're unaware of their bad patterns and how to change them. And so in order to become a different person, a different version of yourself and change, you really first have to become self-aware of these things that are tripping you up. You have to become aware of the problem, right?
It's big time, yeah.
Because you really have to go deep and look at yourself. And that's why we're doing this series, to help you become more self-aware.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. So, what is retaliation?
When I think about retaliation, I think about an eye for an eye. I'm going to get you back. You've hurt me, so I'm going to hurt you back.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the way it shows up when I talk to a lot of the clients. They just resort to that type of action because they have no skills. They don't have any other tools.
Right.
And like we've discussed before, much of the dysfunction shows up from our adaptive child stance.
Yeah.
You know, where do we learn how to, what's the first place we learn how to resort to retaliation? Usually as children. That's how it shows up. You know, your friend picks on you, the first thing you think about doing is hitting them back or responding in the same way that they treated you. Sometimes it's even worse. Yeah. But this is the part that begins to show up as adults. And that's where the true dysfunction kicks in. As children, you know, we learn from our parents how to address that behavior early on. But if that's never the case, we carry this same behavior with us into our adulthood.
And if it was modeled for you a lot of times growing up, it's something that you can take on that way as well.
Right.
And
exactly.
Also, not just at home, but it's natural to want to get back at someone because it's ingrained in us. It's ingrained in the culture. Yeah. But it's unhealthy and it's mean.
Yeah.
And it's toxic behavior. And Dr. Terry Real always says there's nothing that harshness achieves that loving firmness can't achieve better.
That is so good.
So good.
Yeah.
So good.
So what we have here is, in layman terms, retaliation equals revenge.
Mm-hmm. And revenge is nasty because it has a fair amount of FU to it.
And it has more than a fair amount.
Yeah.
It has a lot of it in there. And it's usually resorted to when the first 3 losing strategies that we've talked about over the last few weeks haven't worked. And if you want to go check us out on YouTube at the Relationship Loft and check out the first 3 losing strategies in communication, you can go and check that out. But retaliation sounds something like this. Since you can't admit that I'm right, you're not going to let me control you, you don't care about my feelings, and you don't give me what I want, take that. Yeah.
Since you hit me, I get to hit you back twice as hard with zero shame or remorse to make you feel what I feel because I'm your victim.
Right. Yeah.
And retaliation is offending from the victim position. That's what it is. And so, and you know, if we're keeping it real about retaliation, you know, most all perpetrators see themselves as the victims.
I know I have.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anytime I've come from that type of response, I'm definitely feeling like a victim. and I'm feeling like I have a right to respond in that way.
Right. You feel entitled to respond in that way, right? Yeah.
I think
very childish place, immature place.
And I'm pretty sure many people who are watching have felt the same way and can really relate to it.
I know I can for sure. Yeah. And so we're not just talking about like extreme cases here of like the classic narcissists, sociopaths, psychopaths. We're talking about the everyday couple, right?
Yeah, which is really common. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it plays out very consistently. It becomes a habit.
Yeah. And the bad thing is that one or both partners may be totally unaware that they're even being retaliatory. So we're going to talk about how it shows up so that you can, if you notice yourself playing out any of these dynamics, you can cut it out. Exactly. You know what I'm saying? That's why we're doing this, so that you can be self-aware of these things. Right. Because,
like you said, that's the key.
Yeah.
That is the most important thing.
Yeah.
Because that's the only way things can begin to change.
Yes. Yeah. And so, let's talk about how it shows up just like in our everyday lives, in the everyday world. I'll start by saying this losing strategy in particular, offending from the victim position, is the one that is responsible for like 90% of the world's violence.
That comes from Terry. He says that, right?
Yeah. And it's a huge loser. And it can show up very overtly and directly, or it can be very covert and very passive aggressive, which is more sneaky, and we'll get into that about how it can look in that way. It takes you out of integrity with yourself.
Yeah.
You're really betraying yourself when you resort to this, because you're reducing yourself to a level that really is not who you are.
Right. Yeah, and that's a good point to make, because when a person shows up this way towards us, the offense can be felt because it makes you feel a negative emotion inside. So you make a really valid point that if I do respond, or I choose to respond in that same manner, that negativity meeting negativity definitely is not going to move the conversation, the dialogue in any progressive manner. None at all.
No.
So that's, being aware again of that stance and acknowledging that one of the emotions is one of the key things that begins to show up in identifying that how you're feeling and be moving towards that retaliatory response.
Yeah. And even though in the heat of the moment, right, where it can feel justified, because that voice in your head will tell you that it's justified, right? Just know that voice is a liar. You're in your adaptive child at that point, and that's the voice you're hearing, and it doesn't serve your highest good at all.
Right.
It is not in alignment with the highest version of yourself. I'm telling you right now, it's self-sabotaging, it's self-defeating, because it's compounding depressive volatile action upon depressive volatile action, and it's
super
nasty,
toxic.
It's toxic, it's where shame and guilt live, and it's very low vibe, and people who live in this place, it's just a really crappy place to live. And
the reason, I'm going to tell you the reason why it feels so good. It has a fair amount of, that's the part that, the justification of having the retaliatory response, that's the part that pulls you out of that negative emotion when you feel offended. I'm going to show you what this feels like, or I'm going to respond in this way so that you can see what it feels like to be on the other end of this.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why most people choose that response.
Because it feels good in the moment.
Exactly, in the moment.
Yeah. And I will say this, when it feels good to you to do that, it feels good, right? It makes you feel powerful. And you get a sense of satisfaction. You're coming from a place of serious grandiosity. And it's not a healthy place for you to live if that is you. So, other ways this shows up, right? So, affairs. You were just having a talk about affairs the other day with someone.
Oh, yeah. That, the sexual and the emotional affairs. Yeah, especially I hear this, I've experienced this with conversations from a few clients where they've actually responded in this way because their partners cheated on them.
Yeah.
And their response was, hey, I'm going to get you back, so I'm just going to go, do this with someone else. And how can that serve the marriage in a positive way? That definitely doesn't work out long term.
No. Yeah, there are different flavors of affairs. Yeah. A few different flavors. This particular flavor is when you're having an affair out of sheer retaliation.
Yeah.
To say fuck you.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
Domestic violence lives here. Retaliation, classic narcissism, narcissistic personality disorder lives
another big
here.
One is, I know the guys are familiar with this one. No, you will not be getting any more sex for a while because of your treatment towards me or not giving me what I want, so that's a big one for the guys.
The sex and the intimacy.
Yeah.
That's actually a really big one for the women too. I hear equally from men and women that sex is withheld.
Oh, wow.
So it's not just men who hear, no, I'm not in the mood, or no, you pissed me off, or no, I'm going to withdraw. It's women too. Women have that complaint big time. In fact, I hear it more from women than I do from men.
Okay. That would make sense.
But yeah, going back to classic narcissism, living in this place of retaliation, a true narcissist, and I'm bringing it up because narcissists are it's such a buzzword these days, but the true person with narcissistic personality disorder believes that they are a victim of any and all circumstance, and they will retaliate big time accordingly. For example, if you ever try to divorce a narcissist, the divorce is nasty, okay? They will rake you through the coals. It's bloody, it's nasty. They will do a smear campaign with your family, with your friends. It is yuck, okay? Yeah. So, that's a big one.
Yeah. Another way is the lack of actual emotional communication or connection with your partner. I can identify with this. There have been times that, it's been one of my losing strategies around our relationship early on, when I would get upset with you and I would resort to just kind of cutting off showing up for you in ways when you need me to support you, emotionally sometimes. I would act like it's not a big deal. And that would not go over well. But that did not play in my favor. So I learned to adjust my attitude pretty quickly.
Yeah. So tit for tat is another one. And I want to go back to the emotional connection really quickly. That lack of emotional connection, where one partner is like really vying for that time, that emotional connection, vulnerability, feelings, and talking about things, that becomes really a vicious cycle. And it really is one of the key things that we see couples going through in their marriage. And it's why so many women are pissed because their men won't connect with them. Yeah. And it's why so many men are pissed because their women won't connect with them and have sex and intimacy with them, because the emotional connection isn't happening.
Yeah.
There has to be emotional connection for the physical connection to be prevalent, right?
Yeah.
So
that's a really
key.
Good point.
Tit for tat, like immature childishness, adaptive child behavior happens a lot.
Yeah, this is a good point, because you've said the adaptive child behavior has no interest in working towards any type of repair.
No.
None whatsoever.
No.
And it's quite, as a matter of fact, it's quite the opposite. It's very what's the word? Very selfish interest that the adaptive child plays in terms of any type of problem that you're having. They're not showing up as an advocate for the marriage, the relationship in any type of way.
No. I teach this as a lesson to our clients when they come in to work with us. And it's basically a lesson around, we all have two selves. We have our functional adult self and we have our adaptive child self. And I won't go into the whole thing because of time, but if we don't, as functional adults, and use that part of ourself to manage our adaptive child will manage us, and we will be coming from that place in our relationship.
Right.
So essentially what you have a lot of going on these days is two children married
That's essentially what you
together.
Yeah.
And that's why there's so much fighting, and it's so hard
And
because
bickering and retaliation.
Yeah, and retaliation because they don't have the skill set
Right.
to do this in a way that's effective.
Exactly.
And communicate.
Right.
So communication usually sounds something like this when we're talking about retaliation. You're going to ignore me. I'm going to ignore you. You're going to embarrass me. I'm going to embarrass you back. You're going to hurt my feelings. I'm going to hurt yours equally or worse. You're not going to give me what I want and give me my way. I'm not going to give you what you want. And this just is going to activate and exacerbate all of your partner's triggers and losing strategies, which just ensures you're going to have the repeated cycles over and over again of toxicity.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's huge. Yeah, because I mean, we get a lot of questions from our clients about how do they address this? When it's become the habit and the dynamic. It's like, how do we get out of this cycle? Who does it start with? What do I have to do? And so that's one of the things that we're speaking to in bringing this topic up is, again, talking about awareness of how we're showing up within the scope of the problems that show up in our relationship.
Yeah.
It's one of the keys to beginning the process of moving out of the cycles in a healthy way by identifying where we're shooting ourselves in the foot.
Yeah. Totally. Last one. I want to share this one last because it shows up a good bit when women are the ones who are who have the losing strategy of retaliation in their losing strategy profile. A lot of women will offend from the passive aggressive victim stance, and a lot of times they're pissed off at their husbands because their husbands aren't showing up in the ways that they promised to on their wedding day. And they hold anger and they hold resentment, they hold contempt, and will retaliate in numerous ways, passive aggressively, instead of just being very direct and come from a place of loving firmness as to what it is they want from their husbands.
Right. Yeah.
And I've seen this where some women have been married for decades to their husband for years, and they have never done their inner work. They've never, made that a priority. And by now they're so angry and resentful and full of contempt and controlling and very passive aggressive covert ways that sometimes you can't bring people out of it.
Right.
Because it's been so many years and they haven't done their healing work.
We've spoken about
this.
It's
so sad.
Yeah, we've spoken about this when we begin to work with our clients, and you have one of the partners actually show up and start doing the work and changing how their approach to some of the problems that they're having in their relationship. And the response from their partner is the same. And like my wife just said, it's because the patterns have become and the habits have become so entrenched. The resentment is so deep that the person can't even receive this person showing up differently, energetically towards them. And just from that mature stance, they are just rooted in this childlike behavior around these these situations, and that's really unfortunate. You know, it takes a lot of work for those types of individuals.
Yeah, it totally does. So, what are the solutions?
Oh, I'll let you lead with this one. This is one of you love this.
I do? Okay.
Own your own bad.
So own your shit. Own your shit, right?
Yeah.
Like own your bad patterns, because that's what sets you free. First, you've got to become aware of how you're shooting yourself in the foot, how you're showing up.
Yeah.
And you need outside help to do that. You can't do that yourself typically.
Right.
But it's powerful, and it sets you free once you own your stuff, because then you get to choose to change it.
Right.
Then you get to choose not to be that version of yourself anymore, which takes practice and it takes time, but it totally can be done.
And I want you to hear what my wife just said. Taking ownership of your stuff within the scope of a problem between you and your partner gives you your power back.
Right.
I know people, it's hard to hear.
Yeah.
Okay, but once you do it, the clarity that begins to show up within the scope of the problem, you begin to identify how you're showing up, becoming very self-aware of what you've been doing. And this is what we talk about, taking true ownership of your part within the scope of a problem. When you do that, you actually are able to remove that part of you that has been showing up problematically. And now you can look at yourself from that place and you can go, how can I do this better? How can I show up better? And that's where the transformation begins to take place, because now, because you've identified your weaknesses, the hard places that you don't want to look at, you can show up very differently. Can I be more loving? Can I be more communicative? Can I be more supportive? And watch the reaction from your partner. Yeah,
it's energetic. Yeah. And we're so focused externally as a culture, and we've been taught to look outside of ourselves for our power, for permission, for love, for acceptance, for happiness. And guys, it comes from within yourself.
Right.
And you can never find it unless you do this healing work and go inward and stop blaming your partner for your unhappiness, because the unhappiness is coming from within yourself.
Right on.
So, the other recommendation around solution is being very direct with your partner and telling them exactly what you want and need from them.
Yeah.
Now, whether they give it to you or not, that's a different strategy if they don't. But you at least have to open your mouth and talk and tell your partner what it is you need.
Right.
You know, instead of beating around the bush or being passive aggressive or expecting your partner to read your mind, you communicate, open your mouth and speak.
Yeah.
And last but not least, you got to get the support that you need. You got to get the healing, guys. You've got to get the mindset work. You've got to get the belief structures in place that are necessary to overcome your bad patterns and your, limiting beliefs, your childhood traumas, all of that, so that you can create real and lasting change and transformation in your life and marriage. Because when you don't change at the subconscious level, at the subconscious identity level, your habits are going to win every single time. They're going to win. Yeah. So you have to learn to reprogram yourself and heal.
Yeah, that hard drive is strong until you learn how to, like you said, reprogram.
Yeah.
It's a big deal.
Yeah. So if you are ready to change the dynamic and heal yourself and heal your marriage, if you're single and you're tired of attracting emotionally unavailable or toxic partners into your experience, definitely book a discovery call with us. These calls are between 60 and 90 minutes. And we get to know you. We talk about the main issues at hand. And then we kind of coach you towards a resolution, a plan of resolution. If we feel like we can 1,000% help you with that, we will let you know. If we feel like we aren't the best fit for you right now and you need some other intervention right now, we will let you know that as well. And we'll steer you in that direction.
Right.
If this video served you, it will definitely serve your friends and family. So like, share, screenshot, and send it to your friends or family. Make sure to go subscribe at our YouTube channel and check out the other 3 losing strategies that we've gone over so far.
Yeah, big time. Yeah,
anything to share?
No, I mean that's just a great. I do encourage everyone to subscribe to our channel because we're going to continue to come out with many resources to help everyone who's dealing with these specific issues within their marriage.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next episode, which is the 5th and final losing strategy of withdrawal. So we'll see you then. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye, guys.